Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive exploration into the Fremennik zone for Leagues 4. I'll be going over all of the content you'll unlock by choosing Fremennik as one of your elective regions, as well as all of the content that you're going to be able to engage with. Now, the Fremennik area, of course, starts in Relica, and it looks really small from just the map, but we'll also be getting access to all of the Northern Islands, including the Lunar Isle, Vorkath, the Fremennik Isles, and Miscellanea. You'll also be getting Weiss, this is the Ice Troll City, and you'll be able to go down to Keldagrim, the Dwarven City. Now, okay, I know what you're thinking. You're probably not sold on what I just showed you, and that's okay. Fremennik is a perfect example of what I would call a support region. It's not really something that's going to catch your attention and make you construct your entire build or your entire route around doing the Fremennik, but it does support and enable a lot of different regions and a lot of different routes. That's why if you've been watching a lot of the deep dives, I usually have to say something like, well, you'll be able to unlock this if you have Fremennik. As such, it's not really a great first region. It's probably not something you want to be going first, but as a third region, it's very flexible to put in regardless of what combat style you're going, regardless of what kind of regions you're going. There's a lot to do in Fremennik that's really going to help your league's journey. It's also fantastic for points. I know a lot of people really look down on the Fremennik, but it was actually the most popular region choice along with Kandarin and Asgarnia for top 100 players in the last leagues. I'm not saying you should plan around what the top 100 are doing, but I'm just putting it into perspective that the tasks here are relatively a little bit easier than some of the other zones. And this can be a nice break to have a bit of an easier, a bit of a simpler zone if you already have very dense, packed with a lot of bosses such as Zaya or the desert. Now, for Slayer tasks in the Fremennik area, most of these you'll be able to fight in the Fremennik Slayer dungeon. This is super close to the Fairy Ring AJR. And so you'll have access to basilisks, cockatrice, jellies, Turoth, and Karasks, as well as the Karask only Slayer area. And I'm so thrilled that this video is coming out when it is, because Fremennik has actually gotten an incredible new update with the recent combat relics that have been announced this morning. Now, if you didn't know, you are going to have to pick between mage, ranged, or melee as kind of your dominant combat style, and what this will do is speed up 5-tick weapons to 2 ticks. The Karasks in particular drop the leaf-bladed battle axe, which will be one of the strongest melee weapons you can go if you're going for a melee playstyle. Not only is this better than the Dragon Scimitar, which is like the most iconic mid-level weapon, but it's also stronger than an Abyssal Whip, and in fact, it's even stronger than a Garazi Rapier. So yeah, this is an incredibly strong weapon. It's basically your best melee weapon until you get a Fang, or a Soul Reaper Axe, or a Scythe, which are all pretty rare and hard to get. So if you're going melee, Fremennik is looking way more appealing. You'll also get the Dagannoth Slayer task. These guys can be found in the basement of the lighthouse, which is right next to Fairy Ring ALP, or you'll be able to go down to the Waterbirth dungeon and fight them inside of here. You'll also get access to the Dagannoth Kings, which can be fought as a Slayer task. Now, for quests in the Fremennik area, unlocking the Fremennik region will autocomplete Secrets of the North, as well as all of the prerequisites. This unlocks the Phantom Muspah. Also, there's a little trick here. Secrets of the North will autocomplete the Curse of the Empty Lord mini-quest, and you'll be able to redeem a 10,000 experience lamp from the Historian over in the Varrock Museum. You'll also be able to do this if you unlock the Desert region, because that also autocompletes Curse of the Empty Lord. Unlocking the Fremennik will also autocomplete Dragon Slayer 2 and all of the prerequisites associated there. There's an absolute ton to list, but some of the important ones that you might want to consider. One of the prerequisites is Waterfall Quest, which gives a ton of attack and strength experience. This is done in Kandarin, so if you do want to collect that experience, you're going to want to go and do Kandarin first and then unlock Fremennik. Also, Dragon Slayer 2 auto-completes Heroes Quest. This gives about 30,000 experience spread across a number of skills, and you may want to consider completing Heroes Quest manually over in Asgarnia to actually get the experience. Remember that auto-completed quests do not give you any experience, nor do the prerequisites that are auto-completed as a result. Completing Dragon Slayer 2 will give you access to Lithcrin and the Lithcrin Vault off of Fossil Island. This is where you'll fight rune dragons and adamant dragons if you wanted to, as well as getting all of the drops from those, such as the dragon limbs. And the Lithcrin Vault is also where you're going to be able to make ferocious gloves from Hydra's leather if you had unlocked Zaya and challenged the alchemical Hydra. Thank you to everyone who pointed out that you do not need the Barrows gloves to get ferocious gloves. I have no idea why I thought that, but yeah, I appreciate you correcting me on that. Dragon Slayer 2 also gives you access to the Myths Guild. However, this would also require Kandarin, as the Myths Guild is actually found in Kandarin. The Myths Guild will allow you to craft Wrath runes over at the Wrath Altar, and this can be useful if you plan on casting Surge spells from the standard spellbook, and it will also allow you to do Sinister Offerings from the Arceus spellbook. One of the first things you're going to want to do is get yourself a Mythical Cape, which allows you to teleport to the Myths Guild. In addition, Mythical Capes can be used for construction experience by mounting them and taking them off and mounting them again. This is a really efficient use of teak planks if you don't have a lot of them to spend on construction. Upstairs is the fastest range to a bank. It's literally on the exact same tile, so you'll be able to use the bank, then use the range, do all of your cooking right here. This is probably the most efficient place. The Myths Guild also allows you to make super anti-fire potions. This would require superior bones from Vorkath to start making them though. But of course, you're going to have access to Vorkath because you have Dragon Slayer 2 complete. Downstairs, you'll have access to the Fountain of Old. This can be used to recharge Skills Necklace, Combat Bracelets, and Amulet of Glories. There's not a lot of easy ways of doing that unless you have access to Ascarnia for the Heroes Guild, or you've unlocked Fremennik and Kandarin to be able to recharge them here. However, you will not be able to recharge Ring of Wealth. That would require the Wilderness and the Fountain of Rune. There's also a bunch of dragons here, green, blue, black, and red, and a couple rocks, some Addy rocks and Runite rocks. Okay, and back over to Relica. There are a couple more quests that you're going to want to complete if you choose Fremennik. The Fremennik Isles quest will give you the Nate's helmet. This is a very iconic melee gear. And once you've done the follow-up, the Fremennik Exiles, you'll have access to the Island of Stone and Basilisk Knights. These guys drop the Basilisk Jaw, which allows you to upgrade the Nate's helmet to the Nate's face guard. Completing the Throne of Miscellanea will give you, of course, access to the Kingdom of Miscellanea, where you'll be able to collect some resources that you might need. This isn't really the best for leagues because it's time-gated, but it's something you might want to get out of the way early, throw some gold in there, and then in a week or two, you'll be able to just collect a bunch of resources that you can use them as you please. Now, over in Weiss, you'll have access to a disease-free herb patch. This is how you make Icy Basalt and Stony Basalt. Icy, of course, teleports you to Weiss, and the stony one teleports you to the Troll Stronghold, but you would need Asgarnia to actually be able to teleport there. With the Fremennik, you'll also have Dream Mentor and Lunar Diplomacy unlocked, which gives you access to the Lunar Spellbook. This is by far the best spellbook for skilling and really opens up a lot more options when you're already kind of limited with, the region-locked aspect of the Trailblazer. That being said, you do get Vengeance, a pretty strong damage spell. You'll also get Super Glass Make, which can be used for a ton of crafting experience through glass blowing. NPC Contact, which can be used to talk to your Slayer Master without actually having to go to them in person. Finally, you'll have Spellbook Swap, and this can be used for a number of interesting interactions by swapping to a different spellbook, using one spell, and then swapping to a different one as needed. So you will have access to the Lighthouse, and you'll also have access to all of the God books. These can be really beneficial if you plan on going to the God Wars dungeon in Ascarnia to get God protection from whatever faction you're currently challenging. In the past, completing God books has also been a task, so you may expect to do some clue scrolls if you choose to go Fremennik. For some final skilling methods, you'll have the Relica Rooftop course, which requires level 80 agility. This can actually be pretty useful in leagues because if you didn't know, rooftop courses have a much lower chance of dropping Grace of Marks once you're 20 levels higher than the required level. But because the Relica course is a level 80 course, this means you'll be getting the standard amount of Marks of Grace. Whenever you do this course, you're not going to over level it and basically stop receiving any Marks of Grace. The only course that is an exception to this is Canifis. You get the same amount of Marks of Grace regardless of your level. And this is just a nice way of getting Marks of Grace if you need that for a task that makes you go and get a full graceful outfit. It would really suck to be running the Varrock course and you're getting 1 mark of grace per hour. Oh, and you will have the Penguin storyline as well if you want to do that. There is a Penguin agility course, but really I don't see much reason to be doing this over the other agility methods that you'll have access to. Moving on to Keldagrim, there are some very important things to do here. First up, there is a pickaxe shop which sells up to rune pickaxes. These can be a little bit difficult to get based on your regions, and this is one of the simplest ways to get a rune pickaxe. Along with Keldagrim, you'll have access to the Blast Furnace, a fantastic method for smithing. And in previous leagues, you also got the ice gloves just by unlocking Fremennik. That way you could use the ice gloves while doing blast furnace and smelting all the bars that you need. The best perk here is that you'll only need half the coal to create whatever bars you need, but in general, it's just really fast way of making bars that you can later on go ahead and smith into, whatever you want. Now, the blast furnace, it does have an ore seller who has a collection of ores. However, in the past leagues, this was actually disabled because it would just be too powerful for you to basically be able to buy all your ores, especially the way shops work right now where you essentially have an infinite supply. So I wouldn't really count on just being able to completely purchase all of your smithing experience. You're probably going to have to find some way of actually getting those ores. And surprisingly, one of the most important NPCs, not only in Keldegrim, but really the entire Fremennik region, is the stonemason. While you can get limestone bricks on your own, this is the only place in the entire game where you're able to get marble blocks, gold leaves, or magic stones, which are actually used for a number of very good quality of life features in your player-owned house. As such, Fremennik is a region that really benefits your construction, and in previous leagues, building a demonic throne, which required about 25 million and 99 construction, was actually a master task, so it was one of the capstone pieces of content for this region. So just to explore some of the things that you're only able to build with Fremennik unlocked, all 3 tiers of the Portal Nexus will require the Stonemason. If you wanted to train prayer through a gilded altar, that would also require the Stonemason. Without him, the best you would be able to make is a limestone altar, which gives 275% experience per bone, compared to the gilded altar, which gives 350. So it's not that big of a difference, but it is an extra bonus for sure. For your jewelry box, you'll only be able to create the first tier, which is just Rings of Dueling and Games Necklace. But once you've unlocked the Fremennik, you'll also be able to add combat bracelets and skills necklace. And then further, you'll be able to add Ring of Wealth and Amulet of Glories to create the ornate jewelry box. However, Ring of Wealth will require the wilderness to be able to charge them again. Speaking of the wilderness, with Fremennik, you would also be able to put an obelisk in your house if you want to teleport around the wilderness a little bit more. You'll also be able to mount a Xerix talisman. This would require Zaya. And you'll, of course, be able to put a dig site pendant up in your player-owned house as well with Fremennik. If you really wanted to speed up your construction, the servant's money bag automatically pays your servants. Once again, Fremennik is required for this, but you'll also need Kandarin to actually be able to hire the servants to begin with. And there's a bunch of other construction stuff that's only available with Fremennik, but those aren't as important except for this last one, the pool space. Ornate rejuvenation pools are great because they fully restore your health, prayer, special attack, they restore any stats, as well as curing all kinds of poison. Unfortunately, the different tiers of the pool space are going to be a little bit dependent on your regions. Tier 1 is basically available to everybody. This is a restoration pool, which gives you special attack back. Tier 2 will also restore your stamina. This is kind of useless in leagues because you have unlimited run energy anyways. But in order to get on to Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5, you will have to somehow create this Tier 2 pool. Now, this requires stamina potions, which is not easy to get for everybody. If you've got Asgarnia, you'll be able to get these just by going to the Rogues Den, so that's pretty simple. Also, if you had Mauritania unlocked, you'll actually be able to basically get these from Theater of Blood using the point system, and then you can just take that out and create the pool that way. For everybody else, it's a little bit harder, but it is possible. Basically, you're going to be wanting to trade clean Torstals to Dr. Jekyll, and he gives you a stamina potion in return. You'll need 10 of these, so you're going to actually have to wait quite a bit for Dr. Jekyll to find you. To get Torstals, you can always just grow them. If you do Winter Tot, you'll be able to get Torstals from supply crates, assuming you have a pretty decent level. Everybody will have access to the Isle of Souls, which also means you'll have access to the Dark Chest. This does have a chance of getting Torstals, although the rate is pretty low, so I would probably not farm out 10 of these unless you're truly desperate for some stamina potions. And Kandarin has another easy way of getting Torstals. You can kill Salarin the Twisted and unlock the Sinister Chest. This has a guaranteed Torstal drop. So however you got your stamina potions, let's move on to Tier 3. This is the Rejuvenation Pool, which also adds Prayer Restore. Everybody will have access to this because it just requires prayer potions, so no big deal. If you manage to get here, this should be pretty easy. Tier 4, this is finally going to require Fremennik only, and in addition to all the previous stuff, it will also restore stats. And finally, the last tier, an Ornate Rejuvenation Pool. This would require Anti-Venoms, and you're going to have to unlock Tyranwin to be able to get Zulrah scales in order to make these and actually create the Ornate Pool of Rejuvenation. Remember, you can't just skip to Tier 5, you have to build them in order, so you're going to need all of those steps I just listed. Obviously, that's quite a lot, so you do have a couple alternatives that you could use to restore health, prayer, all that good stuff. If you've unlocked the desert, you'll have the Eladinus statue in Narda. This does everything except for restore any drained stats that you may have. On the flip side, if you've unlocked the Wilderness, you'll have the Ferox Enclave, and the shrine over there will basically do everything, but it will also reset your stats if you have them boosted through like a super combat potion or something like that. So there's kind of a balance there. The Narda one doesn't restore stats, but it also doesn't reset your stats, and vice versa for Ferox Enclave. Obviously, the Ornate Rejuvenation Pool is just the best of both worlds, but it does require quite a bit more effort to get there. Okay, and with most of those skilling options mentioned, we can move on to PVM. In the past, Fremennik was pretty limited with really only one real boss here, but now we're actually going to have 4 PVM encounters that will definitely have tasks as well as the associated drop tables that are of course going to be boosted as you progress through your league's journey. And starting with Vorkath, interestingly enough, this might be the only boss in the game where its normal drops are actually more interesting than the uniques that it drops. Superior Dragon Bones are an excellent source of prayer experience, and by banking all of these, you'll get a ton of prayer experience banked because you're going to be doing a lot of Vorkath kill count anyways. Vorkath also drops a ton of Dragon Hide from all the different colors, and with the Lunar Spellbook, you'll actually be able to tan them, so you kind of have a built-in tanner with the Fremennik area. You yourself become the tanner. Vorkath also drops Dragon Dart tips and some Bolt tips, which can be useful if you're going for a ranged build, and even if you're not going ranged, if you just wanted to use some ranged special attack, some ranged bolts effects, this can be pretty helpful. And Vorkath drops a ton of alchables, which can be a nice source of gold if you need it. Remember, with tasks like building the Demonic Throne, you do have to get like 25 mil gold for that, so some good source of gold is quite useful for this region. For uniques, a Vorkath will drop a Vorkath's head, which can be used to make Ava's accumulator. Animal Magnetism is auto-unlocked with Fremennik. It's the only place you can actually unlock Animal Magnetism, meaning that the Ava's devices are only obtained through Fremennik, and you'll be able to get up to the Ava's accumulator. Vorkath can drop 2 Visages. The Skeletal Visage is unique to Vorkath, and this is used to make the Dragonfire Ward. This is a very strong ranged shield, and it offers Dragonfire protection, so very useful whenever you're ranging dragons. The Draconic Visage comes from all dragons, but you can get this along with your Skeletal Visage grind from Vorkath. And this is used to make the Dragonfire shield a very strong melee offhand if you perhaps don't have access to defenders, or if you just need the Dragonfire protection through the shield. On the subject of Visages, the Fossil Island Wyverns drop the Visage that you need for Ancient Wyvern Shield. This is like the magic version of the Dragonfire shield, and you'll have access to those right from the start with Mistalin, although there's usually a Fremennik task to be able to make all 3 of those shields, so just keep an eye out for those. You may have to grind them a little bit to get them. It's a pretty hard task though. Finally, Vorkath drops the Dragon Bone Necklace, which returns some prayer points when you bury any bones. This can be a useful combo with the Bone Crusher from Mauritania, and if you have the Bone Crusher as well as the Hydra's Tail, which comes from Alchemical Hydra over in Zaya, you'll actually be able to combine them all to make the Bone Crusher necklace, which auto buries bones and also restore some prayer back. Now, on the subject of Vorkath, I did want to talk about its mechanics, which can be a little bit difficult to deal with in Iron Man region-locked setting. Anti-fire potions can be made using ground up blue dragon scales. You'll be able to find a bunch of these over at the Myths Guild, but if you don't have Kandrin unlocked, you can also go to the Isle of Souls. There's some blue dragons over there that you'll be able to loot from. And as I mentioned earlier, if you did have Kandrin for the Myths Guild, you'll also be able to talk to the Herbalists over there and make super anti-fires, which require ground up superior dragon bones, which obviously drop from Vorkath. Now, if you did want to prolong the effects with extended anti-fire or extended super anti-fire, you would need lava scale shards. If you don't have the Wilderness to kill lava dragons themselves, you can also get this from brutal dragons in the Catacombs of Karen, or you can fish infernal eels, which you should have access to an oily rod because you've auto-completed Hero's Quest with the Fremennik area. Vorkath also has the ability to envenom you. Venom is a little bit more difficult to deal with. The easiest solution is to have Tyrannwood unlocked so you can make anti-venom potions, but this would require Zulrah scales. Additionally, if you have Antidote++, you can sip it twice. First to cure the venom, then to cure the poison, and this also gives you 36 seconds of venom immunity. There's a lot of other ways you can cure venom, such as Guthix Rest, Strange Fruit, or just bringing a lot of anti-poisons. Basically, drinking an anti-poison potion twice will cure the venom and then the poison because it takes 2 steps. But if you wanted like a really inventory efficient way, you could try using Cure Me from the Lunar Spellbook, which will cure your poison. You'll have to do this twice, but it might be an easier way. And then when Vorkath summons a little skeletal minion, you can actually spellbook swap back to the standard spellbook, cast Crumble Undead to get the guaranteed hit, and then you're basically ready to keep casting Cure every time you need to get rid of the poison. But if I'm being honest, the best way is probably just going to be to have some kind of shrine available that will be able to cure any kind of poison effects that you have. So whether that's the shrine in Narda or your own rejuvenation pool built, that's probably going to be the easiest way if I'm being honest. Of course, if you're going for a melee build, the melee relic also makes you completely immune to venom and Dragonfire. So Vorkath is going to be a complete breeze if you're choosing to go Fremennik with a melee setup. Next up, Waterbirth Isle. This is how we get to the Dagannoth Kings. There's a bunch of snapegrass here, by the way, as well as some rock crabs in case you wanted to train some melee stats here, and the other rock crabs are really busy. But this is a nice way to collect some snapegrass if you don't want to grow it yourself to make like prayer potions. Okay, and most of the challenge in Dagannoth Kings is honestly getting there to begin with. You're going to be attacked by a whole bunch of stuff, so just be ready. There's usually a map that you can use to know which one to pray correctly. Okay, so the first challenge is getting through a set of doors to go to one of these 3 hallways. Traditionally, you would need a friend to do this, but don't worry if you don't have a friend, your pet rock is always a friend as well. So what you can do is actually drop your pet rock, stand on the other one, and the door will unlock. Don't forget to grab your pet rock before you proceed. The second challenge is destroying all 3 of the door supports, and the easiest way to do this is with the Rune Throne attack special. You can see I can attack this, and it will bounce to all 3 of them. I get a clean kill. However, actually getting Rune Throne axes can be difficult to begin with. Now, if you have Kandrian, you can get some Rune Throne Axes over at the Ranging Guild. You can also try to get a Ninja Impling. These drop Rune Throne Axes, but that can be a little bit difficult to scout one out. Over in Zaya, the Brutal Dragons can drop Rune Throne Axes, so you can try to grind to drop there if you need. And finally, Dagannoth Supreme also drops Rune Throne Axes at a pretty healthy rate. So if your first time in here, you can get a friend to help you out, you should be able to get Rune Throne Axes for any future trips. As a final emergency, if there's nobody around to help you, you can do this solo without the Rune Throned Axes using Last Recall. Essentially, you would get to basically where I'm standing. This allows you to hit 2 of the door supports, but you can't attack the one that you're directly next to. Then you're actually going to teleport out of the dungeon. This will save a spot for your last recall. It's basically going to save this exact tile for when you last recall back here. You would then go through the entire dungeon all over again, and instead you would just go through one of the other hallways, which would allow you to attack the door support that was previously unattackable. So you'd use a ranged and magic hit to destroy that, last recall back, and attack the other 2, and that's a very simple way, but obviously I can't really demonstrate that because I don't have last recall in the main game. Okay, so getting through these tunnels can be quite difficult. For Dagannoth, just make sure you're praying ranged. For these Walasakis, make sure you're praying magic. And then anytime you see the giant rock crabs or giant rock lobsters, you're going to want to pray melee. In the last room right before the kings does have all 3 attacking you, so just be careful over here. What you may want to do is find this little safe spot, this little room right here, which is kind of like a breathing area before you go ahead and head into Dagannoth Kings. This will also let you hop worlds if you need to once you've gotten over to the King's Ladder. So down here, you'll find the Dagannoth Kings. There's 3 kinds. Dagannoth Supreme will attack you with ranged, which is why I'm kind of praying over here. Dagannoth Rex will attack with melee, and Dagannoth Prime will attack with magic attacks. In leagues, you'll have access to the standard Dagannoth King's room, as well as the Slayer if you happen to be on task. This includes just a Dagannoth task. You don't need to have a specific Dagannoth King's task. You'll also be able to access an instance version of the Dagannoth Kings. However, you might not actually want this. The standard and Slayer might still be better. And that's because if you're killing them fast enough, you're going to have to wait a little bit for their respawn times anyways. And so what you might want to do is, if you have like 10 seconds of downtime, go teleport somewhere where you can like restore your prayer, restore some health, and then use last recall to teleport back and keep fighting them once they've respawned. This is important because if you last recall out of an instance, you cannot teleport back to the instance. It will set you outside. So you would have to start the instance again, and then all 3 of them would be spawned at the same time once you start that new instance. And when you fight the Dagannoth Kings, you kind of want to offset their death timers a bit so that they're not all attacking you at the same time, because you can't pray against all 3 at the same time. Now, even though the whole point of Dagannoth Kings is to respect the combat style, because of how powerful the combat style relics are, probably just going to be able to slam them with whatever your dominant combat style is. I destroyed all 3 of them with just a whip and melee in the last Trailblazer League. So you're going to have no problem. They're tanky, but they're not that tanky where it's actually going to be an issue. All 3 Dagannoth Kings drop the Dragon Axe. So it's a fantastic way of getting that for woodcutting if you're not going for Zaya. And it's probably a lot easier to get it through here than it is to go and do Wintertod. Now for the drops, Dagannoth Rex drops the Berserker and the Warrior Ring. This is a great ring for melee strength. And then the Warrior Ring is a good ring for like attack bonuses. Now, if you've unlocked Desert and the Desert Treasure 2 bosses, you'll also be able to take that Berserker ring and upgrade it to the Ultor ring if you've received the Ultor vestige from Vardorvis. This would require not just Desert, but also Zaya to be able to challenge Vardorvis. And with Ascarnia, so that you can fight the Whisperer, you'll be able to upgrade the Warrior Ring to the Bellator Ring, the absolute best attack bonus ring in the game. Dagannoth Prime drops the Seers Ring, a fantastic magic-based ring, and if you have the Desert unlocked, you'll be able to fight Duke Sucellus over in the Fremennik area to upgrade the Seers Ring to the Magus Ring, the best in slot mage ring. Dagannoth Supreme drops the Archer's Ring. This is the range version of the rings. And if you've unlocked the Desert, you'll be able to fight the Leviathan over in Mistalin to get the Venator Ring. This is the best in slot range ring. Even if you don't have access to Desert Treasure 2, all of those rings are very solid, and you'll actually be able to imbue them just by going to Soul Wars. You won't need like Nightmare Zone unlock to imbue those rings. Dagannoth Supreme also drops the Circle. I don't think this bow is very good, but it's probably going to be a task, so just keep an eye out for that. With Secrets of the North auto-completed, you'll be able to go and fight the Phantom Muspah. Ranged is definitely the easiest way to kill the Phantom Muspah, but you can do it with the other combat styles as well. This is kind of a common theme. All of the Fremennik bosses can be kind of killed with any combat style, which is a good bonus for the region. However, melee is a little trickier because the Phantom Muspah does have a really strong melee attack, but you can like stutter step walk to dodge it. Phantom Muspah's uniques are the Ancient Icon. This would require the Desert to get the Ancient Staff, because although you do have Secrets of the North auto completed, you don't actually have Desert Treasure 1 completed. You only have to start Desert Treasure 1. You don't have to complete it, so you won't have that done. This is just an upgrade to the Ancient Staff, which is a little bit more damage with all of the ancient magics. And the Ancient Scepter can be upgraded even further by getting quartzes from all of the Desert Treasure 2 bosses. This basically buffs the effects of blood, smoke, ice, and shadow based on what quartz you have equipped. Muspah drops the Venator bow, which has a special effect that allows the arrows to ricochet and attack multiple mobs at once. This can be a nice way of doing any kind of multi-combat in case you don't have ancient magics, or maybe you don't want to go get chins. And the most common drop is going to be Ancient Essence. This is used to charge the Venator bow so it can actually get that passive effect we just talked about. It's also used to upgrade the Imbued Heart from Slayer monsters to get the Saturated Heart, which gives an even better magic bonus. You'll also be able to make Forgotten Brews, which boosts your magic. It's a magic potion. It also restores prayer, but it drains your melee stats. And finally, with Desert Treasure 2, you'll be able to fight the Duke. The Ring of Shadows from Desert Treasure 2 will actually allow you to teleport here to the Gorok dungeon. It's very close to both Duke and the Muspah, but you'll just have to get this as a drop from the Duke first to actually get the teleport. It's not very difficult. You should get it within like 20 or 30 kills. And the Duke's special drop is the Magus Ring. This is the best in slot magic ring. You'll just have to combine this with the Seers Ring from Dagannoth Prime. Because it's a Desert Treasure 2 boss, you'll also have access to the shared table across all of the bosses. This means you'll be able to get your Virtus Robes from Duke Sucellus, as well as all 4 pieces of the Soul Reaper Axe, because in Leagues, you'll cycle through getting every single piece regardless of what boss you killed. You won't need to actually have every single boss unlocked to get a Soul Reaper Axe. Soul Reaper Axe is pretty strong for melee builds, and as we talked about earlier, you're getting the Leaf Bladed Battle Axe here. So yeah, melee and Fremennik, it does give you some pretty good options. I will say though, this is probably going to be the worst Desert Treasure 2 boss to farm out, because you do have to do the prep phase to get the mushrooms and the salt and make the potions so you can actually wake Duke Sucellus up. The more time you spend not doing damage, the more time you're wasting because you're not taking advantage of the relics that are giving you so much more damage than usual. And so with those 4 bosses out of the way, that's just about it for the Fremennik area. Again, it's not the most dense region. It doesn't give you like a whole lot to invest in, but if you're looking for a third region and you just want to unlock some of the extras from this zone, it really does help open up some options. Personally, I went with Fremennik last Trailblazer, and I really didn't regret it. Compared to the last Trailblazer League, there are some more bosses to do here, so there's going to be a little bit more variety in the tasks. I doubt you're going to have to go and kill Dagannoth Kings 1,000 times. We're just over halfway done with the region guides, and the next ones coming up are very exciting. They're really cool zones, so I can't wait to get working on those as well. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.